Some moments in life arrive without warning, crashing into our everyday routines and reshaping everything we thought we understood about the world. For the paramedics of Crestwood Emergency Services, that moment came on an autumn morning when they realized that sometimes the wildest creatures know precisely when to defy the laws of nature. The ambulance's wheels hummed steadily along the ridge road as Lila checked the dispatch details once more. It was a routine call. Mrs. Harrow had slipped in her kitchen and needed assistance getting up. Nothing pressing, nothing they hadn't dealt with countless times before. Jace kept his focus on the twisting road ahead, expertly steering through the sharp curves that locals knew by heart. A thick morning fog blanketed the ground, slowing their pace as their headlights sliced through the heavy mist, forming a tunnel-like view of the path. The forest loomed close on both sides, ancient firs standing like silent watchers in the faint dawn glow. The first sign of trouble appeared when a shadow darted across their headlight beams. Jace's foot eased toward the brake, but nothing could have braced them for what stepped out of the fog. There, squarely in the road, stood one of the largest black bears they'd ever encountered. Lila's hand shot to the radio, ready to report a wildlife hazard, but something held her back. This bear wasn't behaving normally. Any other bear would have fled at the sight of an approaching vehicle, vanishing into the woods' safety. Instead, this one held its ground, its hulking frame completely blocking their way. Jace's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Something's off," he murmured, echoing their shared unease. The bear swayed side to side, its head tilting in an almost human-like display of distress. Its eyes caught the headlights' glow, and what they saw there sent shivers through them. Intelligence glimmered in those eyes, paired with something deeper, desperation. The bear took a step closer. Every instinct screamed at them to back away, to escape, but then it did something that upended everything they knew about wild animals. It lifted its right paw, not in a threatening swipe, but in a gesture that eerily mimicked a human flagging someone down. Lila had spent 15 years as a paramedic in these hills. She'd seen bears before. They all had, but never one like this, never one that seemed to be reaching out, never one that gazed at an ambulance with what felt like recognition. The bear moved again, this time edging toward the driver's side window with careful, almost tender steps despite its massive size. This wasn't aggression or a claim to territory. It was something else entirely, something that would soon challenge everything they believed about the divide between wilderness and humanity. What followed would alter their lives forever. The enormous bear pressed its paw against the ambulance window, leaving a distinct mark in the morning dew. Its breath clouded the glass, crafting an almost otherworldly scene in the dim light. Lila and Jace sat motionless, their years of emergency training offering no playbook for this surreal encounter. The bear's eyes stayed locked on them, not the vacant, feral stare of a predator, but a gaze brimming with purpose and an unmistakable plea for aid. Its movements grew more urgent, though not hostile. It stepped back from the ambulance, then returned, each time glancing at them with those eerily aware eyes. "This isn't right," Lila whispered, her voice nearly lost beneath their pounding pulses. Every wildlife briefing they'd ever attended stressed one thing: bears avoid humans unless provoked or starving. Yet this one showed neither. It acted like humans they'd seen countless times, frantic to summon help. The bear's next move erased any lingering doubt about its intent. It positioned itself at the front of the ambulance, reared up on its hind legs, and planted both paws on the hood. The vehicle dipped under its weight. Then, in a scene that defied all they knew of wild creatures, it lowered itself and took deliberate steps toward the forest, pausing to look back at them. When they didn't budge, the bear repeated the sequence, striding toward the woods, glancing back, then returning when they stayed put. The pattern was undeniable. It wanted them to follow. Jace's hand hovered over the radio. They should report this. Situations like this called for backup, maybe animal control or the wildlife department. But Lila stopped him with a light touch on his arm. 2 decades in these mountains had honed her instincts, and right now every fiber of her being insisted this was different. The bear's actions grew more insistent, pacing between the ambulance and the forest's edge, its agitation mounting. Each time it returned, its eyes carried more urgency, more despair. It let out soft grunts, nothing like the menacing growls they'd been warned about in safety courses. Time seemed to freeze in that misty mountain air as human and beast stared through the glass. The bear's chest rose and fell heavily, its breath forming small clouds in the cool air. Its dark fur was matted in spots, and now, looking closer, they saw distress in its stance. Something was terribly wrong. Something that drove this wild animal to override its instincts and approach an ambulance for help. Lila reached for her medical bag, her mind racing through possibilities. In all her years, she'd treated humans, dogs, even a horse once, but a bear? The absurdity wasn't lost on her. Yet those eyes spoke directly to her paramedic's oath to aid those in need. The bear made one last desperate bid to communicate. It rose to its full height, towering before them, and let out a sound, neither growl nor roar, but something akin to a cry for help. Then it turned and strode purposefully toward the forest, stopping to look back with a clear message. Follow me. The choice defied every lesson, every protocol, every safety rule urging them not to trail a wild animal into the woods. But as Lila grabbed her bag and Jace snatched the portable emergency kit, they both knew they couldn't turn back. Something stronger than fear propelled them forward. The bear maintained a steady pace, always just visible through the morning mist, its huge form weaving gracefully between trees, constantly checking they followed. The deeper they ventured, the more frantic its movements became. Their boots crunched on fallen leaves and snapped twigs, the sound stark in the morning hush. No birds chirped, no critters rustled the underbrush. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Fog wove through the trees like a living shroud, making each step feel like plunging into the unknown. Lila glanced at her watch. 5 minutes in, they should call for backup. 10 minutes, the bear's pace quickened. 15 minutes, and the faint morning light barely pierced the dense canopy. The bear led them along what looked like a game trail, etched into the earth by years of wildlife. The air grew thick, heavy. The bear's agitation spiked. It surged ahead, then waited, shifting paw to paw in clear distress. Its breathing grew labored, not from effort but from what seemed like rising panic. 20 minutes in, they spotted signs that turned professional concern into dread. Broken branches lined the path, not naturally fallen, but snapped by something large and hurried. Deep, fresh scratches marred several trees, sap still seeping from the gashes. This bear had traveled this route repeatedly recently and in a frenzy. Then the smell hit them. Faint at first, but growing stronger, a metallic tang mixed with a whiff of suffering. Both paramedics exchanged worried looks. Years of emergency work had taught them to recognize blood, even faint traces, and the odor of pain. Their guide halted abruptly, its body rigid. The bear turned to them, and in the dim forest light, they saw tears streaking the fur beneath its eyes. A chillingly human detail on such a wild beast. It let out a low, mournful sound that seemed to ripple through the ground. Just ahead, the trees parted into a small clearing. The fog thinned here, morning light filtering in faint beams. The bear stepped aside, as if ushering them forward, its eyes glinting with an impossible intelligence. It moved with the weight of someone leading others to a life-altering revelation. As Lila and Jace entered the clearing, the bear's bizarre behavior suddenly made horrific sense. What they saw would haunt them for years and forever shift their view of the boundary between human and animal realms. The clearing cradled a scene that drained the color from their faces. In a shallow dip beneath a fallen tree lay 3 bear cubs. 2 were still, their small bodies already claimed by death, but the third clung to life, its tiny chest heaving in weak, uneven gasps. The ground around them was dark with blood, and scattered food wrappers told a grim tale. Lila's knees buckled as the truth sank in. The cubs had stumbled on a campsite's discarded scraps, and with it, something lethal. Twisted metal cans glinted dully in the faint light, one torn open, its jagged edges crusted with dried blood. The cubs had sliced themselves badly trying to reach the food, and something in it had poisoned them. The mother bear, the one who'd guided them here, approached her cubs with such tender care it broke something in both paramedics. She nuzzled the surviving cub, then looked up at them with eyes holding a depth of anguish no wild creature should possess. In that instant, they grasped the full weight of what they were seeing. A mother, watching her children perish one by one, had somehow known the humans in the white vehicle with flashing lights could help. Jace's hands trembled as he opened his kit. The surviving cub was tiny, likely just months old, its breathing shallow, gums pale from blood loss. Foam flecked with blood around its mouth hinted at poisoning. Even more astonishing, the mother bear stepped back, giving them room to work, as if she understood their intent. Their training snapped into gear, overriding their shock. Lila assessed the cub's state while Jace prepped supplies. Deep cuts marred its paws and mouth from the metal, but the poisoning was the real threat. Empty antifreeze containers lay among the trash, their sweet scent a deadly lure. The mother bear watched their every move, her eyes reflecting an almost supernatural awareness. She made soft whimpers, nudging her dead cubs, then gazing at the paramedics with raw grief that stole their breath. This wasn't mere instinct. It was a mother's fierce love. A love so strong it drove her to shatter nature's rules to seek aid from the species that caused this tragedy. Lila's hands shook as she checked the cub's vitals. Its pulse faint and erratic, its body cooling fast. The mother's choice became starkly clear. She'd watched her cubs sicken, helpless, and had seen the white vehicles in town, somehow linking them to salvation. In her desperation, she'd done the unthinkable, trusted humans, led them here to save her last living child. The moment's gravity struck them. This wasn't just a call, not just a rescue. It was a collapse of the divide between human and animal, leaving only a mother's universal love and the frantic need to save her young. The mother bear stood sentinel, her massive form both guardian and supplicant, as they battled to save her cub. Time halted in that clearing, fog cocooning them. The only sounds were the cub's ragged breaths, its mother's soft cries, and the paramedics' urgent work. They had to act fast. The cub was fading, and they didn't know how long the poison had been at work. Lila rifled through her kit, pulling supplies with practiced speed. Every second mattered. The antifreeze was shutting down the cub's organs, worsened by blood loss from the cuts. They needed speed but precision. One misstep could spook the mother, whose trust balanced on a knife's edge. Jace radioed for backup, his voice calm despite the chaos, requesting wildlife services, a vet, anyone. But help was 30 minutes away, and the cub didn't have that time. They'd have to manage with what they had. Lila started in 4, something she'd never dreamed of doing on a bear cub. The mother watched, her dark eyes tracking every move. When the cub whimpered at the needle, she made a low sound but stayed still, as if grasping their intent despite the pain it caused. Treating a wild animal with human supplies forced quick adaptation, estimating weight, adjusting human dosages, hoping they guessed right. A single error could kill the cub faster than the poison. The pressure was crushing, but their hands stayed steady, guided by experience and the desperate need to save this fragile life. Time blurred as they worked. Jace tracked the cub's breathing, while Lila pushed fluids and medicine through the 4. The fog lifted slightly, sunlight piercing the trees to light their frantic efforts. The mother bear remained a constant, alternating between watching them and nuzzling her lost cubs. The toughest moment came when the cub seized. Lila and Jace traded alarmed glances. They had to act fast, but a wrong move could be fatal. Lila made a snap call, tweaking the meds with a silent hope she'd chosen wisely. The mother bear sensed their tension, edging closer, her shadow falling over them as they fought for her baby. Minutes stretched into eternity, each a struggle against time and nature. The cub's life teetered, its fate in the hands of 2 humans who'd never imagined they'd be saving a bear cub in the forest, while its mother watched with an intelligence that defied logic. Hope flickered as the sun climbed higher. The cub's breathing steadied, its tiny form resisting the poison that took its siblings. When the wildlife team arrived, they found an unprecedented scene. 2 paramedics and a mother bear united to save a life, shattering every natural law. Lila and Jace stepped back, their uniforms smeared with dirt and cub blood, as the wildlife vets took over. The mother bear stayed calm, somehow knowing these new humans were allies, her trust born of dire need unwavering. Hours later, as the team moved the surviving cub for treatment, the mother did something unforgettable. She approached slowly, head bowed, and gently pressed her forehead to each of their legs, a gesture of pure gratitude that left Lila in tears. The tale spread fast among emergency crews. Some dubbed it a miracle, others a fluke. But for Lila and Jace, it was deeper. They'd seen a mother's love bridge species, witnessed intelligence and trust in a creature they'd been taught to fear. It spurred new training for responders on wildlife encounters and humanity's tangled bond with nature. The clearing was cleaned, the deadly trash removed, and protections bolstered for wildlife habitats. But the truest change lingered in the hearts of those present that day. They'd glimpsed something extraordinary, a moment when the artificial walls between human and animal worlds crumbled, leaving only the shared truth of love, desperation, and the drive to protect one's young. In that forest clearing, they learned that sometimes the wildest beings know exactly when to trust, and miracles unfold when we're bold enough to trust them back. If this incredible tale of survival, hope, and the unbreakable tie between a mother and her children moved you, subscribe to our channel. Each week, we share true stories highlighting the remarkable links between humans and animals. Hit that subscribe button to catch every heartwarming story of courage, compassion, and the moments that remind us how extraordinary our connection to wildlife truly is.